The morning did not arrive the way mornings usually did in Kadara. Normally, the village woke to sound, roosters crowing, women pounding yam, children laughing as they chased each other through narrow paths. That day, the sun rose into a silence so thick it felt deliberate, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Nayli noticed at the moment she stepped out of her room. The air felt heavy. Not hot, not cold, just heavy. Her mother was already awake, sitting on a low wooden stool, staring into a pot of water that had not yet been put on the fire. The firewood beside it lay untouched. "Why haven't you started cooking?" Nayli asked, adjusting her wrapper. Her mother did not look up immediately. "The fire did not agree with me this morning." Nayli frowned. Fire does not agree or disagree. You light it. Her mother finally raised her eyes. "I tried." Nayli waved it off and moved toward the hearth. She bent to strike the flint. Sparks flew. The wood smoked, hissed, and died. She tried again. And again. Nothing. Annoyed, Nayli straightened. "The wood is damp." "It was dry last night," her mother replied. Nayli felt irritation rise, sharp and sudden. "Everything is not a sign, Mother." Her mother said quietly, "Everything is not nothing either." Nayli turned away. Outside, the village paths were crowded, but not lively. People moved slowly, speaking in hushed tones. A woman dropped her basket and burst into tears for no clear reason. Two men argued over a boundary that had been agreed on for years. Near the well, a group of children stood clustered together, refusing to draw water. "What is wrong with them?" Nayli muttered. As she passed, one child whispered, "She's the one." Another child pulled him away quickly, eyes wide. Nayli stopped. "The one what?" she demanded. No one answered. The children scattered like birds. For the first time since the day before, a small knot of unease formed in Nayli's chest. By midday, the whispers had grown louder. People spoke of dreams. Not ordinary dreams. Not the kind that faded when morning came. A hunter claimed he saw the old woman standing in the middle of the forest at night, though he knew she never left the village. A woman said she dreamed of water, rising slowly in her hut, even though the ground was dry. Another swore she heard her name called from behind her, only to turn and find no one there. The strange part was not the dreams. It was that many of them were the same. When Elder Maka heard this, his face darkened. "Shared dreams are messages," he said quietly to the elders. "And messages are never sent without reason." "What reason?" another elder snapped. "Because a girl lost her temper?" Maka's voice hardened. "Because a boundary was crossed." Still, they delayed. They always did. Nayli heard the rumors, too. At first, she laughed. "Dreams?" she scoffed at her friend Sarah. "Since when did dreams plant fear in grown people?" Sarah hesitated. "These ones feel different." Nayli rolled her eyes. Fear spreads faster than truth. But later, when Nayli was alone, the laughter did not come as easily. She noticed a reflection in a bowl of water and paused. For a brief moment, her face looked unfamiliar, not ugly, not changed, just distant. She blinked and it was gone. That night, sleep refused to come easily. When it finally did, it carried her somewhere she did not recognize. She dreamed she was walking through Kadara, but the huts had no doors. People stood inside, watching her through open walls. Their eyes followed her, but their faces were blank. She tried to speak. No sound came out. Ahead of her, the old woman stood at the center of the square. She was holding a calabash, whole and unbroken. She tilted it slowly, pouring water onto the ground. The water did not spread. It sank straight down. Nayli woke with a gasp. Her throat was dry. Her heart pounded. Outside, the drum beat again. Once, then silence. By the third day, things worsened. A respected elder, strong and healthy the day before, collapsed while greeting the morning sun. His lips moved as if forming words, but no sound came out. He was carried home, trembling. When asked what happened, he whispered only one thing before losing consciousness. "She is awake." No one asked who. They all knew. Fear settled over Kadar like harmattan dust. quiet, suffocating, impossible to sweep away. Still, no one went to the old woman. Still, no one confronted Nayli. Instead, the village did what it always did when faced with discomfort. It waited. Nayli began to feel the waiting. People no longer greeted her properly. When she spoke, conversations ended. When she laughed, no one joined. At the riverbank, women shifted away from her, leaving an empty space like an invisible boundary. Why is everyone behaving like this? Nayli demanded of her mother that evening. Her mother looked tired. You embarrassed someone who should never be embarrassed. Nayli snapped. She embarrassed herself by standing in my way. Her mother closed her eyes. There are people whose presence is older than our pride. Nayli turned away, anger boiling. I will not kneel to fear. But that night, she dreamed again. This time, she was kneeling. On the fourth morning, the village woke to find the path at the edge of Kadara overgrown. Overnight, grass tall enough to reach a man's waist blocked it completely. That path had been cleared every season. No one remembered it ever closing. It was the path that led to the old woman's house. Elder Maka stood before it for a long time, his staff trembling in his hand. This is no longer about a slap, he said softly. This is about permission. Permission for what? Someone asked. Maka turned slowly. For consequences to begin. At that moment, a cry rang out. A woman came running from the direction of the river, tears streaking her face. My child cannot speak, she wailed. As the village gathered, panic rose like a wave, and in the distance, beyond the overgrown path, a thin column of smoke rose slowly into the sky. From the old woman's compound, she had lit a fire, the fire that refused everyone else. Nayli watched from her doorway, her stomach tightening. For the first time, doubt crept past her pride, and deep in her heart, a truth she did not want to accept whispered clearly. What she had done was not being ignored. It was being answered. You shameless old woman. The words tore through the village square like dry leaves thrown into fire. Conversations died. Laughter vanished. Even the goats tethered near the mango tree went silent, as if they too felt the weight of what had just been spoken. Everyone turned. At the center of the square stood Nayli, young, tall, proud, her chin lifted like someone who believed the world owed her space. Her wrapper was bright and clean, her beads shining in the morning sun. She was known in the village, not just known, but noticed. When Nayli walked, heads turned. When she spoke, people listened, or pretended to. Facing her was the old woman. No one knew exactly how old she was. Some said she had been there before their fathers were born. Others whispered that she arrived one season and simply never left. She lived at the edge of the village, in a small clay house half hidden by tall grass and stubborn trees. She spoke little. She asked for nothing. She watched everything. Now she stood there, thin and bent, holding a small calabash of water. Her clothes were faded, patched so many times the original color had long been forgotten. Her feet were bare, dusty, steady. Nayli stepped closer. You blocked my way, Nayli said sharply. Do you think this path belongs to you? The old woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were not cloudy like people expected. They were clear, deep, still. I was only passing, the old woman said softly. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people shifted their weight. Others looked away. A few elders seated near the meeting stone exchanged uneasy glances. Nayli laughed. It was loud, sharp. Passing, she repeated. You? Always in the way. Always begging for space you did not earn. The old woman said nothing. That silence angered Nayli more than any insult could have. Before anyone could breathe, before any elder could rise, Nayli raised her hand and struck the old woman across the face. The sound was not loud, but it was enough. Enough to make the village freeze. The old woman staggered one step to the side. The calabash slipped from her hand and cracked on the ground, water soaking into the dust like it was being swallowed whole. But the old woman did not fall. She straightened herself slowly, placing one thin foot forward, then the other. She lifted her head and looked directly at Nayli. No tears, no anger, no fear, only calm, a calm that felt heavier than shouting. "You have just chosen your path," the old woman said. Her voice was low, but it carried. Nayli scoffed. Threats from a woman who could not even stand straight? The old woman said nothing more. She bent slowly, picked up the broken pieces of her calabash, and turned away. As she walked, something strange happened. The wind stopped. The leaves of the mango tree froze mid-shiver. Dust hung in the air, unmoving. It lasted only a moment, but it was long enough for everyone to feel it. Then life returned. Sounds rushed back in. Someone coughed. A child cried. A hen flapped her wings. Nayli waved her hand dismissively. "Go and rest your bones," she said loudly. "Next time, learn where you belong." The old woman did not turn. She walked on, her steps slow, even unhurried, until she disappeared beyond the huts at the far end of the square. Only then did the village breathe again. But something had already changed. The village of Kadar was not a small place, but news traveled fast there, faster than the river during the rainy season. Before the sun reached the middle of the sky, everyone knew what had happened. Some shook their heads in disapproval. Others whispered, "She deserved it. Old women should know their place." A few said nothing at all, but their silence spoke loudly. The elders remained seated longer than usual that morning. They did not call Nayli forward. They did not scold her. They did not speak the old woman's name. That silence was noticed. Nayli returned home proud, her steps light. Her mother watched her enter the compound. "Why is the village quiet?" her mother asked. Nayli shrugged. "Nothing important." But her younger brother, who had followed her closely since childhood, looked at her with wide eyes. "You touched her," he whispered. Nayli frowned. "Touched who?" "The old woman," he said. "People don't touch her." Nayli laughed again, brushing past him. "People fear shadows because they refuse to turn on the light." Her mother said nothing more, but that night she did not sleep well. As the sun fell, strange things began to happen. A pot fell from a shelf without being touched. A dog howled endlessly, staring at nothing. A newborn would not stop crying until dawn. Firewood refused to catch flame, no matter how dry it was. "Bad air," people said. "Change of season," others claimed. But deep inside, many thought of the old woman's eyes. At Nayli's house, she ate well and slept deeply at first. She dreamed she was walking through the village alone. Everyone she passed turned their backs to her. When she tried to call out, her voice came out thin, like smoke. She woke suddenly, sweating. Outside, the village drum beat once, then stopped. No one was playing it. Nayli sat up listening. Her heart beat fast for reasons she could not explain. She told herself it was nothing, just nerves, just night sounds. Still, she did not go back to sleep easily. By morning, Kadar woke uneasy. A farmer found his yams soft and black, though they had been firm the day before. A woman's water pot cracked while standing still. Children refused to go near the edge of the village. The elders finally gathered. One of them, Elder Maku, cleared his throat. "Something has been disturbed." Another elder frowned. Disturbed by what? Maku did not answer immediately. He stared at the ground and said, "Disrespect has a sound. Even when no one hears it, the earth does." No one said the old woman's name, but everyone thought it. Someone mentioned Nayli. Others waved it off. "She is young. You speaks without thinking." Maku's eyes hardened. Some mistakes do not care about age. Still, no one went to Nayli's house. No one called the old woman back. The village chose silence again. And silence, like disrespect, has consequences. That afternoon, Nayli walked through the village with the same confidence she always had. But she noticed something strange. People stepped aside, not with admiration, but distance. Women stopped talking when she approached. Men avoided her eyes. Even children watched her quietly. "What are they staring at?" she muttered. She passed the path where she had struck the old woman. The broken pieces of the calabash were gone. The ground was clean, as if nothing had ever happened. Still, Nayli felt a chill run through her. At the far edge of the village, a figure stood, the old woman. She was facing the forest, her back to the village, her hands clasped behind her. She did not move. She did not turn. Nellie felt an urge to speak, to shout, to laugh, to prove she was not afraid. But her feet refused to move closer. She turned away instead, annoyed at herself. That night, the moon hid behind clouds. The stars looked dim. And once again, the drum beat, soft, distant, lonely. No hands touched it. By morning, Kadar would understand that what happened in the square was not an ending. It was an opening, and the path Nellie had chosen had only just begun. The elders did not meet in the open square that morning. They gathered instead inside the oldest hut in Kadara, a place rarely used except when matters went beyond ordinary quarrels. The air inside smelled of age, dried herbs, old wood, and memories that refused to leave. Sunlight entered only through a narrow opening near the roof, cutting a thin line across the floor like a warning. Elder Mako arrived last. When he sat, no one spoke for a long while. Outside, the village waited. Finally, Elder Sengo broke the silence. "We have delayed too long." Another elder sighed. "And what exactly do you suggest we do? Chase an old woman because a girl lost her temper?" Maka's eyes lifted slowly. "We are not chasing her. We are remembering her." That single sentence made several elders shift uncomfortably. "Remembering?" one asked. "She is just a woman who lives alone." Maku tapped his staff gently on the floor. "She was never just that." The hut grew quieter. Long before Nellie was born, before many of the people now living in Kadara had taken their first breath, the old woman had a name. She had not always been bent or silent. She had once been called Amara. Amara had arrived in Kadara as a young woman, carrying nothing but a small bundle and a calm confidence that unsettled people. She had healing hands. Plants responded to her touch. Sick children recovered after she whispered to them. Women who could not conceive found hope after visiting her hut. For a time, the village respected her. Then they feared her. Fear, when it has no understanding, looks for excuses. When a chief's son fell ill and did not recover, whispers began. When rain delayed longer than expected, eyes turned toward her compound. When jealousy found no other place to rest, it settled on Amara's doorstep. The village accused her quietly at first, then openly. She was blamed for things she did not cause, praised for things she did not ask credit for, watched for mistakes she did not make. Until one day, something precious went missing from the chief's house, and Amara became convenient. She denied it, calmly, clearly, but truth is often weak when fear is loud. The elders of that time chose peace over justice. They chose silence over correction. They told Amara to leave. She did not fight. She only said, "I will stay where I am seen." And she stayed. Time bent her back. Loss thinned her voice. Betrayal aged her faster than years ever could. But she did not disappear. She watched. She waited. As Elder Maku spoke, the elders of the day felt the weight of choices made long before them. "She never harmed us," Maku continued. She withdrew. That was her response. "And now?" Elder Sengo asked. Maku's voice dropped. "Now?" The villagers reminded her why she withdrew. Silence returned. Outside, Nellie passed by the hut, unaware of the words being spoken about her fate. She carried herself with effort now, pride heavier than before. Something tugged at her chest constantly, like an unseen thread pulling her backward. People watched her from doorways. She felt it. That afternoon, Nellie went to the river alone. She needed quiet. She needed proof that the village had not turned against her. The river had always comforted her. It flowed without judgment. But when she reached the bank, the water was unusually still. No ripples. No insects skimming the surface. Nellie knelt and dipped her hand into the water. It was cold. Too cold. She pulled her hand back quickly, heart racing. "Stop this," she muttered to herself. "You are imagining things." But as she stood, she noticed footprints in sand. Bare footprints. Small, leading away from the water. She followed them with her eyes until they disappeared into dry ground where no prints should remain. Nellie swallowed hard. That night, The dreams returned, not just to Naley, but to the village. This time they were clearer. People dreamed of doors closing by themselves, of names being called softly behind them, of paths changing direction. Naley dreamed she stood in her house, while the walls slowly moved inward. She pushed against them, but they did not resist. They simply kept coming. She woke crying. Her mother rushed to her side. "What did you see?" Naley shook her head, unable to explain. Her confidence cracked, just slightly, like clay drying too fast. By morning, the elders made a decision. They would go to the old woman, not to accuse, not to threaten, but to listen. Elder Maka led the way through the overgrown path. As they walked, the grass bent aside gently, as if allowing passage that had been denied before. When they reached her compound, smoke curled calmly from a roof. Amara sat outside, grinding herbs. She did not look surprised. "You have come late," she said without looking up. Maka bowed his head. "We know." She finally lifted her eyes. They were the same as ever, clear, deep, steady. "The girl did not strike me," Amara continued. "She struck what the village buried." Mako felt his throat tighten. "What must we do?" he asked. Amara returned to her grinding. "Nothing you do now can undo what was permitted. Is there no way?" Another elder asked desperately. She paused. "There is always a way," she said slowly, "but not without cost." That evening, Naley felt a strange heaviness settle over her body. Her laughter did not come easily. Food tasted like dust. When she spoke, her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. She sat alone in her room, staring at the wall. For the first time since the slap, she whispered words she had never intended to say. "What if I was wrong?" The wind outside answered by rattling her door softly. And far away, at the edge of the village, the old woman's fire burned steadily, not in anger, not in revenge, but in reminder. The village had buried a past. Now it was rising. The change did not come with noise. It came quietly. So quietly that at first many people mistook it for imagination. Naley noticed it when she woke and reached for her wrapper. Her fingers hesitated. The cloth felt heavier than usual, as if it carried weight beyond fabric. She shook her head, annoyed at herself, and tied it anyway. But when she stepped outside, something was wrong. The morning light touched everyone else warmly. On her skin it felt dull, not cold, not hot, just absent. She walked through the compound, expecting the usual greetings. None came. A woman she passed lowered her eyes immediately. Another turned her back, pretending to adjust her load. Even the children who once ran to her with stories and laughter, fell silent when they saw her. Naley lifted her chin higher, forcing confidence into her steps. "They are afraid," she told herself. "That is all." But fear usually looks at you. This felt like avoidance. By midday, the first loss revealed itself. Naley went to the market square, where she was known, where sellers once called her name, offering the best goods first, where smiles followed her like shadows. That day, no one called out. She stood before a trader she had known since childhood. "Give me the yams," Naley said. The trader hesitated, then said flatly, "They are not for sale." Naley blinked. "Since when?" "Since now." Naley laughed sharply. "I see them right there." The trader met her eyes briefly, then looked away. "Please move." A murmur rose around them. Low, uneasy, Naley felt heat rush to her face. Is this some joke? No one answered. She walked away, heart pounding, pride burning hotter than shame. As she passed the center of the square, she felt again that strange sensation, like eyes watching her from behind walls. She turned suddenly. No one was there. Still, the feeling remained. At home, her mother watched her closely. "You didn't bring anything," she said. "The market was foolish today," Naley snapped. Her mother studied her face. "Your glow is fading." Naley stiffened. "What nonsense is that?" Her mother reached out, touching Naley's cheek gently. Her hand paused. "Something is pulling away from you," she whispered. Nayli slapped her mother's hand aside without thinking, then froze. Silence fell between them. Her mother did not raise her voice. She only said, "Anger is easier than fear." Nayli turned away, throat tight. That night, Nayli stood before a small mirror polished from metal. She leaned closer, studying her face. Her beauty was still there, but it did not sit the same. Her eyes looked restless. Her smile felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to a stranger pretending to be her. She stepped back quickly. "No," she said aloud. "This is not real." But the mirror did not argue. Elsewhere in Kadara, the village felt the shift too. The problems that had started as whispers now took clearer shape. A potter's clay refused to hold form. A farmer planted seeds that never sprouted. A woman lost her way on a path she had walked all her life. People began to speak more openly. This did not start on its own. We know where it came from. But can it be stopped? The elders met again. Elder Maka looked older than he had days before. "The balance is tilting," he said, "and balance does not fall gently." "Then what is happening to the girl?" Elder Sengo asked. Mako closed his eyes briefly. "She is being emptied." Nayli felt it most in her voice. She discovered it when she tried to scold a child who bumped into her. "Watch where you," she began. The words weakened halfway out of her mouth. The child stared at her, confused, then walked away without apology. Nayli stood frozen. She tried again, calling after him. Nothing came. Her throat tightened with panic. She cleared her throat and spoke louder. Her voice returned, but thinner, less certain. She pressed her hand to her chest, breathing hard. For the first time, real fear took root. At the edge of the village, Amara sat quietly. She did not smile. She did not frown. She watched the sun slide across the sky, her hands resting on her knees. The fire behind her burned steady and calm. A small bird landed near her feet, unafraid. "You warned them," the wind seemed to whisper. "I did," she murmured softly. "And the girl, she is learning," Amar replied. "Learning feels like loss before it feels like truth." That evening, Nayli could not eat. Food sat untouched before her. Every bite tasted wrong. Her younger brother watched her carefully. "You don't laugh anymore." Nayli snapped. "Mind your tongue." But the words lacked power. He hesitated, then said, "You should say sorry." The room went still. "To who?" Nayli demanded. He swallowed. "You know." Nayli stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "I will not kneel because people are afraid of stories." But when she lay down that night, sleep would not come. When it finally did, it carried her somewhere darker than before. She dreamed she was standing at the village gate, holding a basket filled with light. As she walked, the light leaked out through small cracks she had not noticed. No matter how tightly she held the basket, it kept emptying. She woke crying quietly into her pillow, afraid someone might hear. By morning, the truth could no longer hide. Nayli stepped outside and felt it clearly now. Something that once walked with her had stepped away. Not permanently. Not yet, but enough to hurt, enough to warn. And as the sun climbed higher, a single thought repeated in her mind, growing louder with every step she took through the village. What if the consequence was not meant to destroy her, but to change her? The answer waited, and it would not wait forever. By the fifth day, Kadara no longer whispered. It argued. Voices rose in compounds and pathways. Families disagreed behind closed doors, then carried their anger into the open. What had once been a single act now stretched into every corner of the village, touching lives that had nothing to do with the slap, and yet everything to do with the silence that followed it. Some blamed Nayli openly. She brought this on us. She disrespected what should never be disrespected. Others pushed back. She is young. Are we all to suffer because of one moment? And then there were those who said nothing at all, but packed their belongings closer to their beds at night, just in case. Nayli felt the division like a wall rising around her. Wherever she went, conversations paused. If she stayed, people grew tense. If she left, relief followed her absence. She had become a problem, without meaning to. At the elder's compound, tempers flared. Elder Sengo struck his staff against the ground. We cannot place the weight of the whole village on one girl. Elder Maka replied calmly, the weight is not on her alone. It is on what we allowed. Another elder scoffed. Then what do you suggest? That the entire village kneel? Maka's eyes sharpened. Respect delayed is not respect denied. It is respect ignored. Silence followed. Someone finally asked a question no one wanted to ask. Can this be lifted? Maka did not answer immediately. Then he said, only if the village chooses humility over pride. Not everyone liked that answer. At home, Nayli's world continued to shrink. Her mother barely spoke to her now. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. The house felt colder, quieter. The laughter that once filled it had drained away like water from cracked earth. Nayli sat alone, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She remembered the old woman's face. Not the slap, the calm afterward. That was what unsettled her most. If the woman had shouted, cursed, cried, Nayli might have justified herself. But the stillness? It haunted her. That afternoon, the village gathered unexpectedly. Not for a festival, not for a meeting, for a confrontation. A group of women approached Nayli's compound. Their faces were set, their steps firm. Her mother saw them first. They are coming for you. Nayli stood, heart pounding. For what? For answers, her mother said quietly. The women did not shout. They did not threaten. That made it worse. One stepped forward. Since that day, my child has not slept. Another added, my crops failed overnight. A third said softly, the village feels wrong. Nayli opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. They watched her closely. Finally, one woman said, go and apologize. Nayli felt her chest tighten. I already forgot her. A murmur rippled through the group. That is the problem, someone replied. They left her standing there, smaller than she had ever felt. As evening fell, the elders made a decision they had avoided for days. They would call the entire village together. The drums sounded, this time with hands. People gathered reluctantly in the square. Nayli stood at the edge, unnoticed. Elder Maku stepped forward. We have allowed disrespect to grow roots, he said, and now it is feeding on us all. Someone shouted, so what do we do? Maku's gaze swept the crowd. We return what was taken. What was taken? Another voice demanded. Honor, Maku replied, and humility. Eyes turned slowly toward Nayli. She felt them like heat on her skin. Her heart raced. No, she whispered. But the village was already leaning toward a single thought. At the edge of Kadara, Amara listened. She heard the drum, the voices, the shift in the air. She did not smile. She rose slowly and walked the boundary between her world and theirs. The fire behind her dimmed slightly, as if waiting. Back in the square, Elder Maku's voice softened. This is not about punishment, he said. It is about repair. Nayli's legs felt weak. She stepped forward without planning to. All of you are cowards, she said suddenly, her voice trembling. You watched it happen. You said nothing. And now you want to put everything on me. Gasps rose. She was not wrong. The elders lowered their eyes. Maka nodded once. You speak truth. That stunned her. But truth does not remove responsibility, he continued. It deepens it. Nayli's strength drained. For the first time, her pride broke openly. Tears slid down her face, hot and unstoppable. What do you want from me? She cried. The square fell silent. From the edge of the village, a calm voice answered, not loud but clear. Not what you think, Amara said. People turned in shock. She stood there, thin and steady, her presence heavy but not threatening. I do not want fear, she continued, and I do not want suffering. Then she looked directly at Nayli. I want recognition. The word landed like stone. Nayli's knees trembled. Recognition of what? She whispered. Amara's eyes did not leave hers. Of what you chose to ignore, she said. The village held its breath. The moment they had been avoiding had arrived, and there would be no turning away this time. The village square felt different once Amara stepped fully into it. Not heavier, not darker, clearer. People who had been restless moments before now stood still, as if something unseen had settled them into place. Even the wind seemed to slow, brushing gently against wrappers and leaves. Nellie stood at the center, trembling. For the first time since her childhood, she felt truly exposed. Not because people were watching, but because she could no longer hide from herself. Amara walked forward slowly. No one blocked her path. No one spoke. She stopped a short distance from Nellie and looked at her the way one looks at a child who has wandered too far from home. "You have been afraid," Amara said calmly. Nellie swallowed. "I am not afraid." Amara nodded. "That is what makes fear powerful. It convinces you that it is strength." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Nellie's chest rose and fell rapidly. "If you came to shame me in front of everyone, then finish it." Amara's gaze softened. "Shame is not my work." "Then what do you want from me?" Nellie demanded, her voice cracking. "I have lost everything already." Amara shook her head slowly. "You have lost nothing yet." That answer confused everyone, including Nellie. Amara turned slightly, addressing the village. "You taught this girl who she was," she said. "You praised her confidence. You celebrated her voice. But you never taught her restraint." Elder Maka bowed his head. "You taught her to rise," Amara continued, "but not how to look down without contempt." The words cut deep. Nellie felt them sink into her chest like truth. She could no longer fight. Amara turned back to her. "You struck me because you believed I was small," she said. "But smallness is not measured by height or age. It is measured by how easily one dismisses another soul." Tears blurred Nellie's vision. "I didn't know," she whispered. Amara studied her for a long moment. "Not knowing is not innocence," she replied gently. "It is only a beginning." The elders stepped forward cautiously. "What must be done?" Elder Sengo asked. Amara did not answer immediately. She walked to the center of the square and sat slowly on the ground. Gasps rose. Elders did not sit on bare earth during matters of importance. Healers did not lower themselves unless they meant to teach. "Listen carefully," Amara said, "because what happens next will shape this village longer than fear ever could." Everyone leaned in. "The consequence you feel is not punishment," she continued. "It is separation." "Separation from what?" someone asked. Amara looked around the square. "From harmony, from favor, from ease." She turned back to Nellie. "You feel empty because something stepped away from you. That thing is not gone. It is waiting." Nellie fell to her knees, not because she was told to, because her body could no longer hold her pride. "I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking fully now. "Not because I am afraid, but because I see." The village went silent. This was not the apology people expected. It was quieter, truer. Amara closed her eyes briefly. "This apology came late," she said, "but it came alive." Nellie lifted her head. "Tell me what to do." Amara's eyes opened. "You will stand before the village at sunrise tomorrow," she said, "and you will tell the truth." Nellie nodded desperately. "Anything. You will speak of who you were," Amara continued, "and who you became when no one corrected you." The elders shifted uneasily. "And you," Amara added, turned to them, "will listen." "What else?" Nellie asked. Amara's voice softened further. "You will return what was taken, not with gifts, not with words, but with humility." Nellie hesitated. "How?" Amara answered, "By serving those you once dismissed." A ripple of surprise ran through the crowd. Nellie did not argue. She bowed her head until it touched the ground. "I will do it," she said. As night fell, the village felt a subtle shift. Not relief, not celebration. Hope. The fires that had struggled for days began to burn more easily. Children slept without crying. The air felt lighter, as if something had loosened its grip. Amara stood at the edge of the square once more. Elder Maku approached her quietly. "Will it end?" Amara looked toward Nellie's house, where a single light burned. "It will soften," she said. Healing is not sudden. It is chosen daily. And the girl, he asked. Amara smiled faintly. She is at the hardest point of change. That night, Naley slept without dreams for the first time since the slap. No walls closing in. No leaking light. No drums. Just darkness and rest. But before dawn, she woke suddenly, heart steady, mind clear. For the first time, she did not feel watched. She felt seen. And as the first light touched Kadara, one truth settled firmly in her chest. Some apologies do not erase consequences. They transform them. The sunrise would test whether the village and Naley were ready for that transformation. The sun rose gently over Kadara, as if it too was cautious. Light crept across rooftops and paths, touching the village slowly, respectfully. No one rushed into the day. Even the roosters crowed less sharply, their calls spaced and uncertain. People gathered in the square before the drum sounded. They came not out of excitement, but curiosity and something deeper, expectation. Naley stood at the entrance of her compound, her hands trembling slightly. She had not dressed in her brightest wrapper. She had chosen a plain one, simple, faded, honest. Her mother stood beside her. "You do not have to be strong today," her mother said softly. "You only have to be true." Naley nodded. Together, they walked toward the square. When Naley stepped into the open, the village fell silent. She stood where Amara had stood the night before, where she herself had once stood with pride too loud to hear anything else. Her heart beat hard, but her feet did not retreat. Elder Maka raised his staff gently. "Speak." Naley drew a breath. She looked around, not above people, not through them, but at them. "I was taught to believe I was important," she began, "and I believed it meant I was above others." A murmur ran through the crowd. I was praised when I spoke loudly. I was admired when I stood tall. But no one told me that strength without care becomes cruelty. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. I mocked an old woman because I thought age made her small. I struck her because I thought silence meant weakness. She swallowed hard. I was wrong. Some people looked away. Others leaned forward. "I did not just insult her," Naley continued. "I insulted memory. I insulted patience. I insulted the part of this village that survived before me." Tears ran freely now. And when no one corrected me, I believed I was right. The square remained silent, not tense, listening. Naley lowered herself to her knees. Not suddenly, not dramatically, deliberately. "I do not ask for forgiveness," she said. "I ask for the chance to learn what I refuse to see." She bowed her head fully to the ground. The gesture rippled through the village like wind through grass. Elder Sengo cleared his throat, visibly shaken. Elder Maku closed his eyes briefly. At the edge of the square, Amara watched. She did not move forward. This moment did not belong to her. After a long silence, Elder Maku spoke. "Then you will serve," he said, "not as punishment, as practice." Naley lifted her head. "I am ready." "You will begin today," he continued. "You will fetch water for those who cannot. You will clean paths you once passed without notice. You will listen more than you speak." Naley nodded. "And," Maku added, his voice firm, "the village will not shield you from discomfort." A murmur rose, some uneasy, some approving. Naley bowed again. "I accept." The days that followed were not easy. Naley rose before dawn to draw water for widows who barely acknowledged her. She swept compounds where people once welcomed her with laughter. She carried loads without complaint, even when her hands blistered. Some villagers were kind. Others were not. A few whispered, "Let her feel it." Naley said nothing. She worked, and with each task, something inside her shifted, not breaking but rearranging. She began to notice things she never had before. How heavy a pot truly was. How long the walk to the river felt for tired legs. How silence could hold dignity instead of emptiness. One evening, as she rested beneath a tree, a child approached her hesitantly. "Will you come again tomorrow?" the child asked. Naley smiled softly. "Yes." The child nodded, satisfied. That smile felt different from all the others she had known. At the edge of Kadara, Amara prepared to leave. She packed little. She always had. Elder Maku found her as the sun dipped low. "The village is changing," he said quietly. Amara nodded. "So is the girl." "Will you stay?" he asked. Amara looked back toward the village square, where Naley was helping an old woman settle onto a stool. "No," she replied gently. "My work was never to remain." "Will the consequences end?" Maka asked. Amara smiled faintly. "They already have." He frowned, confused. She explained. The consequence was never suffering. It was awakening. That night, the village slept deeply. No drum sounded without hands. No fire struggled. No dreams clawed at the mind. And for the first time since the slap, Kadara rested without fear. But as Amara walked away at dawn, her footsteps quiet on the path, she left behind something heavier than memory. A lesson, one that could not be unlearned. And as Naley watched the old woman disappear into the distance, she felt both loss and gratitude settle in her chest. She did not run after her. She did not call out. She bowed, because some teachers do not wait to be thanked. And some consequences, once understood, become the beginning of wisdom. The village would soon discover whether it had truly learned the same. Time returned to Kadara gently. Not all at once. Not dramatically. It returned the way healing always does. Quietly, patiently, one ordinary day after another. The morning after Amara left, the village woke to familiar sounds. Roosters crowed with confidence again. Children laughed without looking over their shoulders. Fires caught quickly, their flames steady and obedient. But something was different. People noticed one another more. They greeted elders first. They corrected children softly but firmly. Silence was no longer mistaken for weakness. And at the center of that quiet change stood Naley. Naley did not return to who she had been. She did not try. She continued her service long after the elders said it was no longer required. She fetched water without being asked. She sat beside the old and listened to stories she once would have ignored. She learned names she had never bothered to remember. Some villagers forgave her quickly. Others took longer. A few never spoke to her again. Naley accepted all of it, because humility had taught her something pride never had. That acceptance cannot be demanded. It can only be earned. One afternoon, Naley found herself standing at the same path where everything had begun. The path was clear now. No overgrown grass. No heavy air. Just earth worn smooth by footsteps. She stood there for a long time, remembering the sound of her own voice that day. The sharpness. The certainty. She closed her eyes. "I see now," she whispered, not to the path, not to the wind, but to herself. The elders noticed the change too. Elder Maku spoke of it during a teaching gathering. "A village does not fall because of one mistake," he said. "It falls because it refuses to correct it." People nodded. "And it does not rise because of one apology," he continued. "It rises because it chooses to learn." Children repeated his words later while playing, not fully understand them yet, but one day they would. Seasons passed. Crops grew strong again. Dreams returned to being just dreams. The village fell whole. But Amara's name did not fade. Parents spoke of her when teaching respect. Elders mentioned her when settling disputes. Her story became a warning, not spoken with fear, but with wisdom. Do not mock what you do not understand. They would say, some strength walks quietly. Years later, a young girl once asked Naley, "Why do you always bow to old people first?" Naley smiled, "Because I once stood too tall to see them." The girl thought about this, then nodded, as if storing the lesson for later. On a calm evening, Naley walked to the edge of Kadara and stood where Amara's path disappeared into the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft gold and deep red. Naley did not feel guilt anymore. She felt gratitude. Some people teach by staying. Others teach by leaving. Amara had done both. And as night settled over the village, peaceful and undisturbed, Kadara stood not as a place that had been cursed, but as a place that had been corrected, because the greatest consequence was never fear. It was understanding. And that lesson would outlive them all. Years passed in Kadara. Not loudly, not suddenly. They passed the way time always does, quietly reshaping people while pretending to do nothing at all. Children who once watched Nayli bow her head now walked tall themselves. Huts were rebuilt. New families arrived. Old ones faded into memory. Yet the story did not leave. It settled, like dust in the corners of the village, unseen but always present. Nayli had become someone people pointed to without pointing. She understands. They would say, she listens. She learned the hard way. And Nayli never corrected them, because learning the hard way was still learning. One afternoon, a stranger arrived in Kadara. She was a young woman, well-dressed, confident, loud in the way youth often is when it has not yet been tested. She laughed freely, spoke boldly, and walked through the village with the same careless certainty Nayli once carried. Nayli noticed immediately, not with judgment, with recognition. The stranger scoffed at customs, questioned elders openly, rolled her eyes at silence. And one evening, as the village gathered near the square, the young woman muttered something sharp toward an old man who moved too slowly across her path. The square froze, not in fear, in memory. Nayli stood up before anyone else could speak. She did not raise her voice. She did not scold. She simply said, "Stop." The authority in her tone surprised everyone, including the stranger. The young woman laughed nervously. "I didn't mean anything." Nayli stepped closer. "I know," she said. "That is why I am stopping you now." The village watched. The moment stretched. Nayli turned to the elders. "May I speak?" Elder Maku, older now, thinner, but still sharp, nodded. Nayli faced the crowd. "There was once a day," she began slowly, "when no one stopped me." The air shifted. She told the story, not dramatically, not hiding herself from blame. She told it plainly. The slap, the silence, the consequences, the cost. The young woman's smile faded. "When no one corrects pride," Nayli said, "it grows teeth." She turned back to the stranger. "We will not let that happen here." The young woman lowered her eyes. And in that moment, something profound happened. The village broke its old pattern. They did not wait. They did not whisper. They did not delay correction. They chose wisdom immediately. That night, Nayli sat alone beneath the stars. She realized something quietly, almost painfully beautiful. Amara had not just corrected her. She had corrected Kadara. The village that once chose silence had learned to speak, with care. And that meant the consequence had truly ended. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nayli grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly. Her steps shortened. Her voice softened. But her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day, a child asked her, "Why do you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nayli smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nayli walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nayli closed her eyes peacefully. And Kadara continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nellie grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly, her steps shortened, her voice softened, but her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day a child asked her, "Why do you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nellie smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nellie walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nellie closed her eyes peacefully, and Kadara continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nellie grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly, her steps shortened, her voice softened, but her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day a child asked her, "Why do you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nellie smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nellie walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nellie closed her eyes peacefully, and Kadar continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nellie grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly, her steps shortened, her voice softened, but her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day a child asked her, "Why do you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nellie smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nellie walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nellie closed her eyes peacefully, and Kadar continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nellie grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly, her steps shortened, her voice softened, but her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day a child asked her, "Why you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nellie smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nellie walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nellie closed her eyes peacefully, and Kadara continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom. Many years later, long after Elder Maku had joined the ancestors, long after faces had changed and seasons repeated themselves, Kadar became known for something unusual. Not wealth, not power, wisdom. Travelers spoke of it. They correct their children gently, but early. They respect silence. They do not mock age. And when asked why, the elders would tell a story, not of fear, but of understanding. Nellie grew old, not bitter, not lonely, respected. Her back bent slowly, her steps shortened, her voice softened, but her presence grew heavier in the way only earned wisdom can. One day a child asked her, "Why you always sit quietly before you speak?" Nellie smiled and answered, "Because once I spoke before I understood." The child nodded, storing the lesson for later. Near the end of her days, Nellie walked one last time to the edge of the village. The path was still there, clear, open. She sat on a stone and watched the sunset. She thought of Amara, not with regret, but gratitude. Some teachers arrive once. Some lessons last forever. Nellie closed her eyes peacefully, and Kadara continued. The village never said Amara was powerful. They said she was patient. And patience, when ignored, becomes consequence. But when respected, becomes wisdom.